Hello, everybody. Welcome into the BettingPros podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined today by Terrell Furman Jr. and by Matt Perrault. Guys, we are talking March Madness. This is our betting guide for the tournament as a whole. We've got some first-round bets in here as well coming up at the end of the show. We got the bracket last night. Terrell, you and I did a show last night, kind of our instant reactions. Now that we've had a night to kind of sleep on it, do you feel any different about the bracket? Do you have any other reactions that you feel now the day after?
Yes, I still think it's pretty comical that my UNC Tar Heels are in the tournament. And I will say, still very, very, very much confused on how they got here. But if I know anything, I've been betting March Madness for a while. And every time I fade the team that I'm like, you should have never got in, and then they end up winning a game. So I'm probably going to end up betting North Carolina at some point.
Perrault, do you have any, before we get into our best bets, kind of initial takeaways from what we saw last night?
Yeah, I think Carolina makes a run. I think Carolina getting in, their draw is actually pretty good. And, I mean, yes, we can get angry at it. I really would love to find out if we could videotape how this stuff ever goes down to eliminate the questions, because you have the head of the committee who is the AD of North Carolina. So you have somebody who obviously
gets money.
He claims he's leaving the room, but it's kind of like your wife leaves the room. Like, the rules still apply when your wife leaves the room. Like, just because your wife's not there doesn't mean like the marriage is over. Like, so like you're the head of the committee. Like, you may not be there, but like you're looking at the guys going like, you know what you're gonna do, right? Like, oh yeah, we got you. Don't worry. So that whole impropriety thing, I would have loved to have heard the conversation, because did West Virginia's coaching conversation come into play? Because they brought up Tucker DeVries. And when you bring up Tucker DeVries, he hasn't played in 3 months. He didn't play a single Big 12 game.
8 games this season.
And I love Tucker DeVries. I'm a Drake guy. I mean, I bet on Drake a ton last year with Darren DeVries and his son Tucker. So, like, to use Tucker DeVries' injury as some type of metric to keep West Virginia out, I'm like, hold on a second. So, and then is there a conversation you have about Darren DeVries going to Iowa? He's their number one look. They want him to take over after Fran McCaffrey was fired earlier in the week. So did that come into play? The Indiana-Ohio State conversation, how did that go down? Because metrically, you could say the net rating, Carolina's better than those two. But in terms of quad one wins, which they claim they all look at, Carolina was a joke in quad one wins. So that was my biggest takeaway, is that like the interview afterwards, I felt like opened up so many more questions about how the bracket was put together. How is Louisville a 9 seed? Excuse me, an 8 seed. How is that 8-9 game in which the Creighton Blue Jays made the final of the Big East tournament and Louisville made the final of the ACC tournament, and they're playing each other in Lexington, Kentucky, in the backyard of Louisville? They're like, hey, look, we're going to screw you seed-wise, but we're going to put you in Lexington, and you'll play the number 1 seed overall in the next game. So there's a lot of questions on this bracket.
Yeah, I think the West Virginia one is so interesting. Like, last night, we started taping as soon as the selection show was over, and we were talking about big snubs. We didn't even mention West Virginia. We were talking about Indiana, Boise, because it didn't even really I didn't register the fact that this team that was in every single bracket.
Bubble.
Literally, on Bracket Matrix, 111 out of 111 brackets had West Virginia easily in. It didn't even, like, register with me, like, oh, wait, they're not. Absolutely crazy. And I feel like in the past, this is anecdotal, I can't think of a right example for it, but I feel like in the past we've heard the committee say, like, when players are injured, you're just looking at the resume anyway and not trying to take that in consideration. Some years it seems like they do. So there's just not a lot of consistency in that regard either.
For Duke, I mean, like, I don't care what Duke says about Cooper Flagg. I don't care that they're claiming that Cooper Flagg is going to play. He's not playing in the first 2 games. There's no way Cooper Flagg, the number 1 pick overall in the NBA draft, is playing in a meaningless 1 versus 68 game coming up in this tournament. It's not happening. So he is going to sit, but they gave Duke a number 1 seed. And there wasn't even a conversation about the Kenyon Martin rule. Remember Kenyon Martin? I'm 47, so I'm kind of older than you guys. Kenyon Martin got hurt in the Conference USA final. He was the player of the year in college basketball. They dropped them from a 1 seed to a 2 seed because Kenyon Martin's injury happened in the conference tournament, hurt his rib. That, I guess, is gone. Like 25 years later, we're not even talking about star players getting hurt, having an impact seeds, because Duke should have been impacted, but you can't touch the golden goose, and Duke is fine, obviously.
If you think you know college hoops, you can take your bracket knowledge to the next level with the brand new NCAA Tournament Pick'em contest sponsored by FanDuel. Pick your winners or make your predictions against the spread all tournament long for a chance to win up to $1,000 in FanDuel DFS credits, signed jerseys, and free annual BettingPros subscriptions. The best part is it's completely free. Enter now at bettingpros.com/contests. Again, bettingpros.com/contests. All right, guys, let's dive into some of our best bets. We've got a couple different categories here. You guys are going to be giving out some of your favorite picks for these different categories. Like I said, we're going to wrap up with some first-round bets as well. I want to start with kind of the Cinderella angle, the favorite double-digit seed to make a Sweet 16 run. Perrault, I will start with you.
I think Colorado State has gotten a really good draw. I'm a big Nico Medvedev fan. I can't say his last name. Fan. Excuse me. Medved fan. Head coach of the Rams. They get a banged-up Memphis team in the first round. There's always a 5-12 matchup that I like with them to come out of there. So I think Colorado State is a team to take a look at. Their metrics, both top 50 in offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency. And I know the Mountain West Conference didn't get a ton of love this year, and it wasn't as strong as it's been in previous years. But this is a hot basketball team that came into the conference tournament, winning 6 games in a row. They won all 3, winning the conference tournament, and now take on a Memphis team that's not going to be most likely without their best player coming up. I think into the second round, you've got a CSU team that could make a run. They win the first game, and then I think they got a real shot, Maryland or Grand Canyon. I watched Grand Canyon play here in Vegas. I was saying I want them to play a slow, unathletic team, and Grand Canyon could win. Didn't happen. They didn't get a slow and unathletic team in Maryland, and they have no Queen. There's nobody on that Grand Canyon roster that's going to be able to handle Queen for Maryland. So that was a really bad draw. But I think CSU can slow the pace down, can burn the clock, and really create a problem for Maryland in the second round. I like CSU over Maryland. I like the Rams to make a run here to the Sweet 16.
Oh,
Yeah.
If only there was a coach that could ruin the athletic gift that Maryland has in the tournament.
We talked a bit about this last night, Perrault. I'm not sure if you know this. I went to Maryland and am a big Terp fan. And so I was not thrilled to see you put Colorado State as your pick here when I was noticing the show sheet. But I don't disagree. And in fact, a lot of my Maryland fan friends were talking last night when we saw the draw, like, oh, we got like the worst 5 seed. This is great. I was like, I'm not looking past Colorado State. I agree with you on the coach. I think he was a guy I wanted the year they hired Willard. I really liked Medved, or however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
I think he's an excellent coach. I think he's going to end up going to Minnesota. So like maybe some distraction there if they are kind of letting that get inside the locker room. But they're a good team. Torvik, I think, has them as like a top 10 team in the last month and a half of the season so far metrically. Like they have been playing as well as almost anybody. So I think it's a good pick. And as I discussed last night, I am not a Kevin Willard fan, so I would not be surprised to see them lose to a double-digit seed. Terrell, what do you think about this one?
No, I like it. Plus 350 odds for Colorado State. I think it's all right. I think the big part for them is actually getting past Memphis. I think that if you sit there and you tell me you're getting either Grand Canyon or Maryland in the second round, you feel pretty all right about your odds. But I think the big part is, can they get past that first round matchup with Memphis? They are laying 2.5 points there, so it looks like it's a little bit of a.
They're the only 12 seed favorite, Terrell, though.
It opened as a pick 'em and then almost immediately moved. Yeah,
that's the part that's concerning me, and I don't think Memphis is no slouch. So I think like once you get past that first game, you're golden. But the hard part is getting past Memphis.
Terrell, who's your favorite double-digit seed to make the Sweet 16?
I tried not to go homer here, but give me my VCU Rams, man. They play really, really well defensively. They take away the 3-point line, and that's how you beat BYU. You force them off the 3-point line and don't let them get hot. This VCU team can make this a 60-60 type of ugly game. And those are the games that VCU plays in the non-conference. They went in the non-conference and they played a bunch of little ugly, really close games, really not getting destroyed by a bunch of teams. And so I think that this is what they do with this BYU team. And if you tell me they get past BYU in the next round, I potentially get Wisconsin, who has 0 offense in the last 3-4 minutes of games. yeah, VCU has a really, really good chance to make it. I like the coach Ryan Odom, and he's actually on the bubble to be getting another big coaching opportunity, which VCU has been that standpoint for a lot of coaches where you have Shaka, you have Mike Rhodes, like a lot of coaches go on to bigger things from VCU. So he needs that tournament run, though. He needs that tournament run that really, really boosts his stock, and I think he can do it here. So, yeah, give me a little Sweet 16 for VCU here at plus 460.
Perrault, what do you think about this one? I mean, I like the winner of VCU BYU to make the Sweet 16 for sure. I definitely am not backing Wisconsin, especially coming off 4 games in 4 days. They're playing in Denver at altitude. I really worry about them. So I really like the winner of BYU VCU. I could see that one going either way.
Here's the thing with BYU. I think BYU has got a halfway decent shot to go to the Final Four. They've got to figure out how to play defense enough and then hit the shots they hit in the Big 12 tournament. Now, they lost to Houston, okay? So, like, that's one of those things where, like, you run into Houston, it's a top 5 team in the country. They're going to stop you. But the way they shot against Iowa State just confirmed that, okay, it's not just at BYU, because they shot like that at home all year. I mean, Kansas went there and had a historic loss. Like, the teams going to BYU have had a really hard time winning in Provo this year. But now they went on the road to a neutral, and they shot in Kansas City the way they shot at home. So I think BYU is one of those teams. It's looking at my sleeper teams, to make a deep run here. At 20-1, you got BYU potentially going to the Final Four. I like their draw. I like their coach. I like their talent, and they shoot the basketball as well as anybody in the country. I'm a big BYU fan, so I have a hard time fading BYU in this bracket because I do think BYU is going to be a problem.
That is our next category, is the kind of favorite long shot bet to make the Final Four. You mentioned BYU 20-1. How do you like them matching up with, theoretically, Duke on the other side of this region?
In the Final Four?
In the Elite Eight to get to the Final Four.
So I'm making this play because it's a long shot, right? So we're talking about 20-1. The way I would do this is take the 20-1 pre-flop before we start. They go up against Duke, and you're going to be able to take back whatever you want on Duke and guarantee yourself a 10-1 return. They're not. If Cooper Flagg is playing for Duke, legitimately playing, and I think by the Elite Eight, Cooper Flagg is playing for Duke, they're not beating Duke. Like, BYU doesn't have the horses to handle. They can't guard Cooper Flagg. Like, there's no one who, really nobody in the country is anybody who can really shut down and guard Cooper Flagg at his size and his athletic ability. So to me, take the long shot, the 20-1 BYU. If they do make the Elite Eight, you got a heck of a chance to go ahead and fade that. And go ahead and have and guarantee. I think you guarantee yourself profit because I do think Duke would win that game.
I would love to see, even before that matchup, BYU against Alabama in the Sweet 16, because that would be 2 top 12 teams on KenPom offensively. Which is
I'm fading.
That's a 200 total. That's
it is.
Total.
If you can't play defense, you can't win in March. Period. You can't win it. This love affair with Alabama. I watched them. I was at the SEC tournament. I'm telling you, Alabama is a problem. They have a big issue when it comes to what Sears does. He shoots them into games. He shoots them out of games. They've got size, but they've got a lot of inconsistency up and down that roster. Alabama might be one of those teams we're talking about going home after one game. Like, you want to talk about the shocker of the entire tournament, that Bama would lose their first game.
Terrell, who's your long shot bet to make the Final Four?
Give me Oregon at 31-1. Because it's the whole Duke thing again. So we're telling me that there's a potential that if Oregon gets that far, and granted, Liberty is a good squad, so you have to get past Liberty. But if they get that far with Dana Altman, who is really, really good in the tournament against the spread, and you're telling me that he's covering these numbers and he has a chance to win, and he's going up against Cooper Flagg and this Duke team, who I question in late game situations, I think that they're really, really good. But if you push them and you make this a competitive late game situation, it took a freaking lane violation for them to get past North Carolina. So I think that is really, really good opportunity where Dana Altman can coach that team up and knock off a Duke in that side of the bracket. And once you knock off Duke on that side of the bracket, then I think all the floodgates open. So yeah, I like Oregon and Dana Altman to figure this out. 31-1 just to make it to the Final Four. Yes, please.
Yeah, Perrault, what do you think about this one? I don't want to just totally discount the losing streak, but they lost 6 out of 7 at that stretch in kind of late January, early February. Besides that, they have 2 losses all year. So this is a good team.
Oh, look, I cover Dana Altman at Creighton really closely, so I have ties to that program. I'm biased when it comes to Oregon. You don't have to convince me to take Oregon in the dance when it comes to Dana Altman in tournaments, whether it be at Creighton or Oregon. The guy's an absolute wizard. He may be the best coach in America nobody talks about. He has incredible ability, quick turns for Oregon. Watch what they do. If they win their first game, they will have a completely different game plan the next game, and it will befuddle the opponent as to who they're facing and cause them really trouble to figure out. The press for Oregon, historically speaking, Dana has been a pressing coach. He likes to do some token pressure that really makes teams get out of their offensive sets. Or Oregon loves to play under games in tournaments for that reason. Yes, I can get behind any Oregon bet you want to give me. I'll get behind.
If you want to build the perfect bracket and take down your pool, use the free bracket optimizer at bettingpros.com/bracket. Optimize your picks using advanced data and betting odds. Lock in your favorites and we'll do the rest. Find key matchups and smart upset picks instantly. Make your best bracket at bettingpros.com/bracket. All right, so we talked about favorite long shot to make the Final Four. How about a favorite long shot bet to win it all, Perrault?
Tennessee. So I'm a narrative guy when it comes to the tournaments. So this Rick Barnes story is so crazy. Rick Barnes has done everything except win a national championship. And people will tell you that this bet's horrible just based on Rick Barnes alone, that they cannot win a championship because Tennessee is coached by Rick Barnes. Well, why not this year end that whole conversation? Do they have the talent? Absolutely. Do they have the point guard? Yes. Do they have a killer? Yes. How's their draw? Not bad. Do they play a killer schedule? Yes. Are they playing good basketball right now? Of course. Look, I think the Volunteers have as much of a shot as anybody here out of a 2 seed. They play defense as well as anyone in the country. You could say it's St. John's and them, the 2 best defensive teams in the country. If they hit shots, they can beat anybody in the country. It's always that offensive question when it comes to the Vols.
Jay Wright couldn't win it all until he did. Tony Bennett couldn't win it all until he did. Rick Barnes couldn't win it all. Maybe he will. I like this one a lot too, especially like looking at KenPom. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. The 4-1 seeds are historically strong in terms of the efficiency metrics. Tennessee is fifth. And in most years, a plus 31 net rating on KenPom would be good enough for one of the top 2 seeds in the entire tournament. They're a very, very strong team. It just happens to be a year with 4 other ridiculously strong teams. I agree that the draw is not that scary, like in the slightest, really. When we were doing kind of our shoot from the hip Final Four picks last night, I had them to make the title game and then ultimately losing the title game. But I am totally with you on Tennessee. I love that as a bet right now, even with the Rick Barnes of it all. Terrell, what do you think about Tennessee?
It's the Rick Barnes piece. Like, it's the Rick Barnes piece. And if he gets past and exercises those demons, then yeah, it looks good. But I think that is a interesting part of the bracket. I'm kind of sold, and we'll talk about it, on another team on that side and them making it. And so that kind of got me off of Tennessee here. But I don't like the Tennessee look. For me,
what's your
I went
pick,
to a
yeah.
legendary. I went to another legendary coach. I actually changed my mind multiple times and changed it again as we started. Michigan State, 31-1. Izzo this is the best team Izzo's had in a while that can do this, and I think that if they can just find a way to score the basketball consistently, especially from behind the 3-point line, they are going to be really, really, really dangerous. The defense is an astronomical level. I think that Auburn does get messed up getting Louisville potentially in Kentucky. If that's the thing, the perfect situation that gets Auburn out of this side of the bracket, then I think Michigan State, after the great season they had and how they performed in a Big Ten tournament, I think that they're licking their chops a little bit and they can go in here and make a little bit of a run. So if I had, and they're right there on the borderline, you know how we talk about top 20 KenPom in offense, defense. They're 27 in offense and 2 in defense on KenPom. So they're right there on the borderline, and maybe some things move right in their favor. Give me Michigan State at 31-1.
327th, though, Terrell, in 3-point shooting.
Yeah, horrible.
They can't shoot. They can't shoot. Like, I can't get behind Michigan State for that reason. They defensively fine, but look what they played in the Big Ten tournament. And I don't mind backing teams early in the tournament. I think Michigan State's a good play. ATS-wise, I think they're a good play. But once we get to the Sweet 16, the second weekend, I don't like this Michigan team. Michigan State team. I don't like any of the Big Ten teams, to be quite honest. I don't like Michigan. I don't like Maryland. I don't like Michigan State. I think as we go into the tournament, I think the Big Ten gets exposed. I was stunned at how many Big Ten teams got in. I watched a lot of Big Ten basketball. I was like, what are we doing? Why are there this many Big Ten teams getting in? And we still saw, two teams in Indiana and Ohio State both being left out of the Big Ten, and they're ticked off and angry. So there could have been 10 teams from the Big Ten in this bracket.
Yeah, Michigan State's interested. They obviously are such a deep team. It's been their calling card all year. The defense is great. They won, probably the second best conference in college basketball this year. And yet I look at the team and I'm like, besides Jace Richardson, who's the star that steps up like really when it matters most and goes out and wins you a game, like so much of their success is dependent on the depth, the effort, the Tom Izzo of it all. It's not necessarily the players in a way it is for some of the other top 1 or 2 seeds. So that does make me a little nervous on that side of it. But like you said, I mean, it is Tom Izzo. He's one of 6 or 7 coaches in this tournament to have won a title before. So it's not like there's that many of them. Obviously a great coach there. Let's go to kind of along those lines. The worst value bet to win it all. Perrault, I'll start with you here.
Florida 4-1. Best team in the country, deepest team in the country, hottest team in the country, winning the most historic conference we've ever seen. It's 4-1. I have a much better ticket on it, but I've been backing the Gators literally since January. I saw nothing over the weekend that's going to change my opinion about the way that they play. They've got the killer guard that you need. They've got a point guard that doesn't turn the basketball over. They have a young and hungry coach that wants to prove himself and show he's among the elite. Give me Florida all day.
I think he is among the elite. We talked about that a little yesterday too. I think Todd Golden is an excellent, excellent coach. And I said this last night too. I texted my friend who's a Florida alum the day they hired him, and I said he's making a Final Four in the first 3 years he's in Florida. Like I think he's that good. So I'm not surprised he's been playing this crazy well. Terrell, what's your worst value bet to win it all?
So is that the favorite?
Shortest
That's
odds.
your favorite bet,
right? But shortest odds.
Oh, shortest odds.
Yeah. He's they're currently the odds-on favorite. They were 4-1 last night. They're plus 250 now. So everyone came in and bet
plus 250. Wow.
Yeah, they're the odds-on. I bet MGM they're the odds-on favorite. Duke at some books still has plus 260, plus a little bit of a.
And that's the
value.
bet I can't make. I can't make a plus 260 bet on Duke. I just think it's too many things that could go wrong with trying to insert 2 hurt players back into the lineup and hope that they have the regular production. Like they could be in there and be going at 70%, 60%. Like we don't really know. And so I cannot place a bet on Duke at those odds. I'd rather just play them game to game and watch what I'm doing there. But Duke is one team I can't bet.
So let's go into our favorite bet to win it all. And Perrault, you do still have Florida here, just that better odds you got earlier.
Yeah, I got it at 10-1. So like my favorite future bet on the dance is Florida. I have 2 plays with Iowa State at 20-1 and Florida at 10-1. The Iowa State bet's dead. There's too many injuries. Cyclones could lose their first game given the injuries that they have suffered. But Florida, I think, is still the team to back. I think you can shop it around. If you don't want to play the 4-1, I'll talk about what I'm doing with Houston and Duke here in a second, but there's ways you can play Florida from a game-to-game perspective if you want. I just think if you look at the odds and look at the 4 teams, I'm not trying to totally disrespect Auburn as the number 1 overall seed, but as Terrell said, they got a very difficult game potentially in the second round in Lexington, Kentucky against Louisville. But also on top of that, the Yale game last year for Auburn and Bruce Pearl still really rings true to me. I can't get that out of my head that Auburn consistently has been the team that has gone into these tournaments and been exposed by a different style of play because they've been playing in one conference for 2 months, a very similar style. I mean, every game I was in Nashville, like every game was the same. Every offense in the SEC is pretty much the same. They have athletic bigs that shoot threes. They have guards that get into the lane and kick out to the wing. And that's just college basketball. But if you play a team that's going to play differently, and all of a sudden you're taking on a Mountain West Conference team or a team that's going to do something you're not ready for, or a team like Creighton who's got a big guy who wants to slow it down and throw lobs every game. I mean, there's nobody that you really go, okay, Auburn's going to lose to anyone. They're one of the best 5 teams in the country. But I can't get behind Auburn for that reason. I feel like they've got upset potential written all over them.
I'm glad you mentioned Auburn. I was actually going to bring up the fact that we haven't really said their name all that much yet on this episode, and they are the number 1 overall seed. Obviously, they've got
talking about them losing.
Yeah, they've got Broome, obviously, one Player of the Year candidate. I thinking about Bruce Pearl, like we were just talking about Rick Barnes. He's been at Auburn for a decade, and he's gotten to the second weekend once. He was that Final Four run in 2019. That's it. Like they have not gotten out any other year. And that last year one, I had them in the Final Four last year. So last year's really hurt me.
And they're stumbling. I mean, they've lost they've lost 3 of 4.
Wrong direction.
Like, things are not going great for Auburn at the moment. And I've watched Auburn closely because one of my good friends, his sons, Simon Walker, is a 4-star recruit that's going to play next year for Bruce Pearl in Auburn. So I've been watching them and going like, okay, let's see what this team does. They've got a lot of guys who I think are looking at their paychecks and looking at what's going to happen in the future, and maybe looking at either the transfer portal, looking at NIL money, or looking at the NBA. And I mean, Petway's an unbelievable guard. He's gone. Like, he's going to the NBA next year. He's going to be a lottery pick next year. So like there's different players on that roster that concern me about the NCAA tournament going, all right, do they really want to make this sacrifice? Are they going to make a business decision when it comes to how they play in this tournament? And they're going to have a war on their hands potentially in the second round.
Terrell, what's your favorite bet to win it all? I'm going with Houston. I think Samson's going to be able to get it done. They have all the intangibles. You talk about those teams that got to be the top 20 Ken Palm. That's Houston. They're right there. You talk about the teams that nobody's really talking about. Nobody's really talking about Houston as the 4th 1 seed. And it's because of what happened earlier in the season. They took those couple of losses. Everybody kind of wrote them off. Oh, Houston's not going to be that team. They're going to be good, maybe a top 10, top 15 team. And then they just go and run through the Big 12 with no resistance at all. They lost one game. Yeah. I think Houston's playing some of the best basketball. I think they have the guards that are not only able to defend, but able to score in the clutch time. Like, they went to Uzan in that Big 12 championship game, and every single possession started with Uzan, and he's not even the best player on the team. Like, they're so deep, and I think that if Cameron Sampson ever had a team to make a run with Houston, now is the time to make the run. He's gotten to the Final Four. He understands what it takes to coach a team to the Final Four. Now I think he finally gets close to the mountaintop. So if it's not Florida, I think it's Houston.
I know they say like the tournament doesn't really start till a 1 seed loses, so this is true to a degree every year, but I feel like it's to a higher degree than normal. It really does feel like it's the 1 seeds versus the field. Like, they are just so strong this year, especially looking at the metrics in a way that it feels different than other years. Again, we like a team like Tennessee, right? Terrell talked about Michigan State making a run, but it really feels like one of these 4 1 seeds is going to go all the way when I look at this field.
Well, it's not crazy. And I've seen people that I respect their opinion saying all 4 number 1 seeds will be in San Antonio. And I don't really have too much of a pushback on that, given the way that the NIL world has allowed the power conference teams to grab talent. If you look at Auburn, I mean, if you look at the SEC even, every guy that was on the I think the last 5 players that did the conference player of the year, the final 5 finalists were all at mid-majors last year. And like, you just look at, or they started 1 or 2 years ago. They transferred into the schools that they were at. So we're talking about normally having a 12 seed, a 13 seed, a 14 seed, where they got one kid that could be a star in a power conference. Well, that kid no longer plays at McNeese State. I know Will Wade's a popular pick, but Will Wade's going to North Carolina State or UNLV, one of the two. He's getting one of those 2 jobs. So but programs like that, he would have one unbelievable star player that would take them to the tournament, and we spend all this time talking about them. That doesn't really exist right now in college basketball, because if the kid could play, he got a paycheck and he went to go play for a power conference school. So because of the depth of the powers, you're right, the 1 seeds, how deep they are. Houston, absolutely. They go 8 deep. They can hurt you so many different ways. Auburn goes 8 deep. They can kill you. Duke has got 5 top 50 players on their roster and the player of the year. So if we sit here in San Antonio and it's all 4 1s, not going to surprise me.
You can get your college basketball betting edge live by joining Matt Perrault and Terrell Furman Jr. every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on the BettingPros YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/bettingpros for expert NCAA tournament picks and betting breakdowns. Hear the best bets before the odds move. They'll, of course, be talking about the tournament very heavily on that stream. I want to kind of throw out a category just for you guys, just any other general favorite bets that you have that maybe didn't fall into one of the other discussions we had. Perrault, anything stand out to you?
So I'm going to take $100 and I'm going to roll it over every round for Houston and Duke. So Houston and Duke, you're going to win 33 cents with Houston. You're going to win 15 cents with Duke. Okay. You're going to win nothing. But as we start to go and you roll that money line over, you're going to have some pretty big numbers potentially coming down the road, these are money line plays, not just against the spread. We're just money line playing and rolling it over. So that's how I'm going to approach. I'm not going to take 2.5 to 1. It's ridiculous to do that. You could make way more money betting it this way than just rolling it over, getting them to the Final Four. So I think Houston is making the Final Four. I'm not sure about Duke, but I'm willing to at least back them to see what they're going to do. And if Cooper Flag plays, you're going to have time between games like the Sweet 16, between the round of 32 and Sweet 16. You can start to see what Duke looks like and whether you want to keep the experiment going. But that's how I'm playing Houston and Duke. I'm not going to bet anything pre-flop. I'm just going to money line roll it over throughout the entire tournament.
Terrell, what do you think about that rollover bet?
I like it. I'm not mad at it. I think that I haven't actually played that angle, but I think it's a good angle because I think both of those are my final two. Like those who I think are the final two. And I think, it's a toss-up between Florida and Houston. I would love to see that type of matchup and those contrasting styles there. But yeah, I think that it's a good play because ultimately when I make my bracket, I'm going to have those two in the final two. So I think that you're going to make a lot of money going towards it. So yeah, I like it.
Were there any other kind of favorite bets that stood out for you, Terrell?
Yeah, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to bet all the 13 seeds on the money line. I think as I look at the seeding, 13 has been a pretty good number that has gotten at least a win in a number of different tournaments here. But also, I look at the teams, and you get Yale going up against Texas A&M, and oh man, that one already just screams Auburn all over again from what Yale did last year. A different, like Matt talked about, a different style playing that Texas A&M team. They could potentially get the win outright there. Talk about your Maryland Serpents and how I just don't trust them in the tournament, so I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped one. High Point, I think, has a really, really good chance against Purdue. And I think High Point can beat Purdue outright as well. If I get two of these, and I didn't even mention, who was the last one? Troy's 14, I believe.
The other 13 is Akron over Arizona.
Yeah, Akron. And then Akron against
Arizona.
And I think Arizona can drop a game. And we've seen Arizona drop games in the tournament. And so the 13 seeds, I look at them and I'm like, man, I don't know which one of y'all are gonna win, but I feel like two of y'all are gonna win. And if two of them win, I'm gonna be sitting pretty easy. So I'm taking money and I'm betting all the 13 seeds on the money line. I think I'm gonna get two of those four.
And CBS had this yesterday. If you want to follow that theory, in the last 5 tournaments, 50% of the 11 seeds have won the game outright over the 6 seed. So if you want to go and talk about double digits, if you want to do that strategy, taking all 13. You can go in all 11. You take all 4 11 seeds, and you're most likely going to get 2 of them, and you're going to wind up profitable by betting all 4 11 seeds. You're going to get plus 300 plus 400. If 2 of them cash, you're good. You're going to be up big if that holds. Where 50% of the teams win the 11 seeds over the 6 seeds.
And speaking of the 11 seeds, I'm not sure if we're still on the streak or not, but there was a stretch there where one of the play-in game winners was winning a second game every single year, at least one other game every single year.
I think it's Carolina. I mean, I think they've got the talent. They've got the 9 lives. They got to feel like they got to go justify themselves because you know what Hubert Davis is going to do. Everyone is counting you guys out. Everyone says you don't belong. And RJ Davis might just go nuclear for 2 games and, shoot them right into the second round.
And you have Chris Beard, who is potentially going to like 5 other schools after this. So you have that angle that is always fun. And then the only thing that concerns me about North Carolina is the fact that the SEC really, really put belt to behind to the ACC this year in almost every single matchup they could. So that's the only concern that I have for them is that they get out of the first 4, which I feel pretty confident they will. And they go play an SEC team, which typically has dominated the ACC over the past couple of years. But very, very. I'm looking at Texas too, man, because I was really, really down on Texas, but they got healthier and healthier and healthier, and they went on a little bit of run in that SEC tournament. So if they come out of it and they decide to go on a little bit of run, won a game or 2, I wouldn't be surprised.
I'm so down on Texas, and then I watched them, and they in my face won 2 games, and I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yep.
I mean. I'm with you. I don't like Texas.
I don't like them
all
either.
Year, but
I don't like them either.
But they're playing well. I mean, I think Arthur Kaluma is such an absolute cancer, and every team he's gone to, he's been problematic. But he played really well in Nashville, and he really helped them out on the boards and hitting threes. And like, I'm with you. I'm not betting Texas because I'm clearly wrong with Texas, but I don't think they're good, but they're playing well.
I want to just quickly ask Perrault, because I saw you kind of nodding when Terrell was going through all the 13 seeds. We haven't talked much about Purdue. They were in the title game last year. It sounded like you seem to like that pick of possibly High Point upsetting them.
I love the High Point play. Yeah, I think High Point's got the potential. They got the coach. They've got a lot of talent on that roster. I think High Point is a team. They were down in their conference tournament a couple of times, and they rallied and came all the way back to win the thing. So I think they're battle tested. They're not going to be afraid of anybody in this tournament. And I think if we're talking about teams that look like upset makers out of the mid majors, High Point fits that bill of teams that want to go ahead and be the David versus Goliath and take down Goliath. I would back High Point for sure. I would bet them, definitely take the points, but money line sprinkle on that play.
Purdue certainly has lost to double-digit seeds in the past on a number of occasions.
And I'm fading Big Ten teams. I'm fading the Big Ten. I'm not. I watched a lot of the Big Ten tournament, and I was like, oh my gosh, Wisconsin shoots way too many threes. They can be any game in any game, but they can shoot themselves out of any game. I have no idea what Maryland was doing at the end of the game against Michigan, like going back to Pep. 8-year-old basketball. Stop ball.
How did Michigan win that tournament? Like, how did that happen?
It's the simplest conversation. You have 5 seconds to go. Donaldson's the only player on the court that can get the ball from the net to net in 5 seconds. You know what the play is and how you don't stop ball. Tackle the kid if you have to. Make him hit free throws. It was the singles. I mean, Kevin Willard, I like the guy. I know you don't like him. I actually like Kevin Willard a lot. But that was malpractice. Like that game, I lost my mind at the end of that game because of how basic that play was and how Michigan won. And then the same thing with yesterday with Wisconsin. Like, if the 3-point shot's not there, I mean, normally Greg Gard's a guy who can go ahead and change up his offense. It was just jack three. And I was like, what am I watching?
They've been doing that all season.
Yep,
they've
that's
been doing that all season. Like, if this guy does not hit a shot, just shoot it again. You might hit it the second time.
Right.
Like, that has been, I cannot wait. I should really be fading Wisconsin against Montana. I really, really should.
It was malpractice, that whole tournament. And I'm watching Michigan State, and I'm like, okay, is this team really good, or is this team just riding the coattails of Tom Izzo? And everyone's like, oh, Izzo in March. Yeah. Really? Because that game against Wisconsin, they should have won that game against Wisconsin. They shouldn't have lost that game. They should have won that game. They were up big in that game, up by 9 in the second half, and they blew it. So, like,
I'm not even sure, like, if you said, like, you have to pick one Big Ten team to outperform their seed in this tournament, I'm not even sure who I would want to back.
It's a great question. Who would I back?
Outperform their seed?
Yeah, like to spring at least one upset by seed. Like,
they have to be. Oh man, because if you put them up against Auburn, I don't think they're beating. The only reason I like Michigan State is the chance that they don't play Auburn.
Who would I pick as a Big Ten team?
I think every single Big Ten team, if I had to pick, they're going to underperform their seed or outperform their seed. I'm picking underperform. I can't think of one that I would pick.
I mean, I would probably, because I'm biased, I would pick Oregon if I had to pick one team to go and make.
That doesn't even count. Oh my god,
they're a Big Ten team
now.
They're a Big Ten team.
That's not even. Man, I thought he was about to say. I'm like, oh, what team is he going to say? Oregon.
They're a Big Ten team. I mean,
I guess.
I agree.
It's
weird,
Oregon
but they're a Big Ten team.
Maybe Illinois, and I don't like Illinois. I do like the matchup with Kentucky because I think that would be a back and forth game, and I think they could spring an upset over Kentucky if they get to that point. I'm not sure they get to that point. So maybe Illinois, even though I'm not a huge Illinois fan, really, or a Brad Underwood fan. In general,
would be more impressive if Illinois beat whoever they came out of that 11 game than the Kentucky game. If they play Kentucky, I feel like I'm gonna be on Illinois against Kentucky.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will.
Brad Underwood is a really interesting story because when I was working in Houston, he was the head coach of Stephen F. Austin before he went to Illinois. Mm-hmm. He does a ton of things himself. So he was negotiating all of the contract for Stephen F. Austin. So when I would call to have a conversation with the university, I was talking to the coach. Like, he didn't let anybody. He's a control freak. So, like, in college basketball, control freaks sometimes do really, really well. And so I like Brad Underwood as a person, as a coach. I've had good relations with him. I just think this is an interesting year for Illinois because again, like anybody else, the NIL money that they're throwing around and the guys that they're grabbing a hold of, I thought Illinois would be better in this world and getting better players in this world, given the Orange Crush and given that their boosters tend to write checks. I think Illinois is a program to watch in the future for going ahead and buying players.
Let's wrap up with some of our favorite first round bets. Perrault, who you got?
So I've made 3 plays so far. The first is Arkansas, and these numbers are gone, unfortunately, because I bet them at the open. But Arkansas plus 5.5 against Kansas. There's no way I am backing Bill Self in KU. I mean, they are just 1, they're overrated. 2, they don't like each other. 3, I'm not sure Bill Self knows how to coach this team. You have Calipari, who's in Providence, who every Italian paisan in the building is going to be cheering for him. Plus, he's a former UMass coach. He's in the backyard there. So I'm going with Arkansas plus 5.5. In the same building, later in the night, St. John's laying 17.5. I think they're going to annihilate Omaha. It's an awful matchup. Omaha defensively is horrible. St. John's is playing much better, and I think they have the killer instincts. Rick Pitino took Providence to a Final Four back in the day. Everybody in that building is going to be cheering for St. John's. So both games there in Providence, I like. And then I saw UC San Diego here at the Big West tournament. As I said, I'm fading Big Ten teams. I've bet against Michigan 3 straight games now. I lost the first 2. Third time's the charm. Give me the Tritons to go in there. Michigan is in the 300ths for turnover percentage. The number 2 team in the country to turn you over, UC San Diego. Too many turnovers for Michigan. I'll take the Tritons to win the game outright.
One of the questions that I was thinking about asking at the top of the show that I didn't get to, but you've almost answered here for me, is the second round matchup that we want to see. We're getting Rick Pitino against John Calipari. I think that's top of everybody's list.
American Bowl. We're going to have Tommy DeVito sitting courtside. We're good. It's going to be good.
And they hate each other. Passionately hate each other. Because so, quick story. Pitino, former point guard for UMass, who didn't get to play with Dr. J because that was back in the day when point guards weren't allowed to play as freshmen. So he never played with Dr. J, but he was on the roster with Dr. J. So Pitino always has seen like he's the UMass guy. So Calipari goes to UMass. He builds the Mullen Center. He goes to the Final Four in 1996, and the 2 guys hate each other. So that would be an unbelievable matchup for so many reasons. That's 30 years of hatred between Pitino and Calipari.
That would easily get prime billing TV window if we get that game on Saturday or Sunday.
Can I make an adjustment?
Sure.
I know we said the double-digit seed, and I took my homer pick of VCU.
Yep.
I am now looking up odds for Arkansas to make it to the Sweet 16. I mean, if he gets this game against Pitino, anything can happen, and that team can get up, and Boogie Flan is back.
Yes.
I am now getting down on Arkansas to make it to the Sweet 16. As for my first-round bet, I don't think Georgia is any good. I think Georgia has an issue scoring the basketball consistently. And you have to be able to shoot the ball lights out if you are going to beat Gonzaga. You have to shoot the ball lights out if you're going to beat Gonzaga. Or you better be one of the best defensive teams in the league, and I don't think Georgia is that. I think Georgia has an issue of turning the ball over. I think they have an issue of turning the ball over. They turn the ball over way too much. I think Gonzaga's going to take advantage of that, going to get points off the turnover, run the score up. Offensive rebounding, I think, is going to be a good matchup, and then the Zags shoot 80% from the line. That's what I need from a team to cover 6.5 when I get down close to the end of the game and you're shooting 80% from the line. I think Gonzaga's going to run through Georgia in this game. Give me Gonzaga laying 6.5.
See, that's what you mentioned. When I saw that draw, I said, wow, that's St. Mary's 4.0. That's like playing St. Mary's for a 4th time. And they lost to St. Mary's in the regular season twice. They beat them in Vegas in the final of the West Coast Conference tournament when it was basically a home game for them. There were so many Zag fans here, like there always is. And St. Mary's just, had a hard time hitting shots. Georgia has a couple of really young, talented bigs that and as the year has progressed, they've gotten better and better. Georgia was the best under team on the road away from home this year, all the way until we hit March or really late February. Then they became a dynamic over team. And I think like 6 of the last 7 games for Georgia went over because the numbers got too low and they started to hit shots. That's an awesome in-game betting game for me. I want to watch that game to see how Gonzaga matches up with the length of Georgia because they are a long basketball team.
What would you think, Perrault, about Gonzaga against Houston? Because if we get that in the second round, that's 2 top 10 teams on KenPom. Obviously, Mark Few gets to the Sweet 16 very often, but going up against an excellent 1 seed, what would you make of that matchup if we get it?
I think Houston's going to kill everybody. I mean, I have this like feeling that like we're going to be talking about Houston like not being tested till San Antonio, till the Final Four. Like they're just so much better, so much deeper. They have had this offensive explosion this year. They can hit threes. Like we know about their their defense. We know that they are the most dynamic rebounding team we've probably ever seen in college basketball, but their offense is the difference. You can't score. I mean, BYU scored 99 on Iowa State and 52 the next day against Houston. They scored half. So like I don't think Gonzaga has much of a shot against Houston.
The only other team that I want to ask you guys about quickly before we get out of here, just because we didn't mention them yet, UConn is the 2-time defending national champion. They're the 8th seed. I'm not saying I'm going to pick them to upset Florida, but I feel like we at least have to ask kind of what their outlook looks like here, given what we've seen from Hurley the last 2 years and what we've seen from them in the tournament the last 2 years. Perrault, any thoughts on UConn?
I hate Dan Hurley. I hate UConn. So I have a flaming passion for both of them. I'm a UMass graduate, and I'm a Creighton guy. So I hate UConn tremendously. I hope they lose by 40. Is he? I'm really curious. Is he going to come out and call himself the best coach in America again? Is that Hurley's calling card? I mean, he was finally a little bit contrite after he lost to Creighton in the semifinals of the Big East tournament, and we're like the top 2 teams in the Big East are playing. We shouldn't be there. Look, Liam McNeely's a tremendous player. He is one of the most fun guys to watch. He's cocky, arrogant. He believes in himself, but UConn just isn't very good this year.
Terrell, I know we kind of talked about this last night, but for those who missed that episode, any thoughts on UConn maybe in a potential matchup with Florida or even getting there?
Oh yeah, they're gonna have their hands full with Oklahoma, and I mean, hey, give Oklahoma credit. They were 13-0 before they got to the SEC, so they were doing something right before they got to SEC play, and maybe that comes back up here in the tournament. But I don't think they have anything for Florida, honestly, truly. I think just like how Matt said that he thinks Houston is going to destroy everybody. I think Florida is really going to destroy everybody on the way, and so even if they make it to the second round, I think it's a double-digit win by Florida.
Yeah, look, Fears is Oklahoma is getting slept on a little bit here because of their record and what happened in the SEC. But I watched Jeremiah Fears play in person. That kid's a lottery pick. He's the best player on the court almost every time he steps onto the court. And when he needs to take over the game for Oklahoma, he can do that. UConn's got no answer for him. I mean, he is a really talented player and a lot of fun to watch.
Defense really been an issue for UConn this year.
We'll go ahead and wrap up there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to check out all of our tournament coverage on bettingpros.com. Also, check into the Daily Juice with Matt Perrault. He'll be making picks throughout the whole tournament and also those live streams with him and Terrell as well. For Matt and Terrell, both of whom hate Maryland for some reason, I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.